Aloha everybody, this is Dr. BethAnne and this is August Intuitive You. I had to stop and think there for a second of what month is this. We are talking about trusting the intuitive self this month, and I chose this topic because if you're paying attention, you can't happen but to notice that things are changing in our world, things are changing in the cosmic energies, things are changing inside of ourselves, and things are changing day by day in life as we know it. And we are moving forward. We are really at a crossroads with humanity right now, and these are the choice points that we're going to be going through where we figure out, do we move forward with more love or not? And I feel very strongly that the only way that we are going to love ourselves forward and grow ourselves forward at this point in time and make decisions that are heart-based and learn to lead in love is by integrating and trusting the intuitive self. And that work begins inside of us. That work begins with us doing our work of finding wholeness and finding healing and really learning to trust our intuitive self. So we're going to be talking in this video about just what the heck is the intuitive self and how do we sort of define this amorphous thing in the first place, and then ways to learn to listen and tune in and to really develop a trust relationship with that part of ourself. So the intuitive self is the part of ourself that is deeply connected to what I call the universe of wisdom within and the universe of wisdom without. I see the intuitive self as our innate knowing. It is deeply connected to our heart, it's deeply connected to our soul, and this is the part of ourself that already knows. This is the part of ourself that knows we come from love. This is the part of ourself that knows we are all connected. This is the part of ourself that knows something before we even know how we know it about situations in our life that's quietly guiding us. This is the part of ourself that perceives through not just the five senses, but through our body and through the instincts that we have in our gut and through flashes of insight. This is the part of ourself that can take things that look really separate, a cloud-shaped heart and a license plate that has like 333 on it, and maybe a missed phone call that came from like Angel Falls or something like that, and that part of ourselves hooks them up and says, I see the bigger picture here. This is a sign. This is information for something I've been asking about in my life. There are millions of ways that our intuitive self speaks to us, and this is highly differentiated and individualized based on who we are, what our gifts are, and then what our understanding is of the world around us. For somebody who is really tuned into numbers and who studied numerology or just finds it really interesting, they might always be seeing 1111s or 222s or something like that. And for somebody else who's just not a numbers person, that might mean nothing to them. Maybe their intuition guides them somewhere else where they're always noticing certain words, or they're hearing the same song over and over again that has a message in it. Our intuitive self is infinite and it is endless. And so it's really, really fun to explore it. Building and trusting our intuitive self is not a matter of like, oh, I'm tuned into my intuition, so I'm super intuitive all the time. It's a little bit like a muscle that can be built, but it's also a little bit like a skill that can be developed over time and that we can have more and more of a mastery experience with. And even a master craftsman who was like an amazing artist and amazing at what they did, even a master craftsman after a while might introduce a new art form or be pulled in a new direction, or say, I'm already a sculpture, I've mastered that, but it's coming into me that now's a really good time to paint or to do bigger 3D pieces. So whatever our gifts are, they can always be expanded upon. They can always be developed. Our intuitive self is the part of ourself that is timeless and that is deeply connected to the divine part of who we are, and that connects us back to the ethereal realms and the land of soul and source energy. So that part of ourself is able to be explored, and yet it's so vast we could spend our lifetime exploring it, and we could spend our lifetime learning about how our intuition speaks and where we're being led. And the more that we invest in that part of ourselves, the more we begin to grow our gifts and to really grow our intuitive abilities. So there is material out there about developing your intuition and cultivating your intuition. I have a course out. I know lots of great intuitive healers who have done classes or workshops or master programs or something like that. And I think all of that's a value in terms of having like resources and tools that teach you, here's some concrete ways to grow your intuition. But the way that I feel is really the most helpful is less about like didactic learning and more about experience. Developing our intuitive self is an experiential process. Developing our intuitive self is really about opening our hearts to our intuition, saying, I want to live more intuitively in this world, setting time aside that is really kind of geared towards being our intuitive side, and then seeing what shows up and seeing what happens during that time. So if you are in the middle of a really, really busy workday and you've got phone calls going and there's texts coming through your phone, and I don't know, maybe you've pulled up social media a bunch of times and you're thinking about like what's for dinner tonight, or your weekend plans or something like that, how much of a shot do you think your intuition has at breaking through and kind of tapping at you and saying, hey, I'm trying to tell you something? That's a lot of noise for your intuition to try and break through and to try and shout over. And our intuition is usually a quiet knowing. Sometimes it can come out in a way, especially if it's a situation where we need an immediate response or we are being given immediate guidance, like that's unsafe, don't do it. It can be loud then, but more often than not, our intuition is a quiet knowing. It is a resonance. It's something we feel in our body. We might notice the energy shift around us. We might, like I said, know something without knowing how we know it. We might have a thought that just comes into our mind, like a text message that just shows up there. And we think, well, where did this come from? This must be my imagination. And it's our intuition using like the full instrument of our body to bring us wisdom however it can. So we have to give our intuition space in order to really learn to work with it and learn to hear it. So if you're not giving yourself space for that, that's something that you want to think about doing. And when I talk with people about carving out space for intuition, a lot of times what I hear is, I feel like I should be doing more in my spirit time. And what I would say to that is, if it's a should, toss it out. If it feels like a should, you shouldn't be doing it. If it's I desire to do more, I want to spend more time in my intuition, I want to deepen my spiritual connection, I want to learn more about the universe inside of me and the universe without. If it feels like a desire, that's fantastic. But if it feels like an obligation or something that you should do, then you're coming at it from a place of fear, right? A place of lack, a fear that you're wrong because you're not doing more of it. And so then your intention's not clear. Somebody wise told me that years ago when I felt like I should be doing more. And the wisdom I was given at the time was just live your life. You are doing plenty growing day to day by choosing kindness, by being in love. At the time I was newly married and I was really nurturing my family system. Like that's love, that's growth right there. I was growing my heart in different ways. And the wisdom was, when the time is right, you will dive into your gifts more. And guess what? The time wasn't right for a few years. And when it was right, it was right. And then I wanted to do it. It was never a should. So that's kind of my qualifier when I say, in order to develop our intuition, we need to make space for it. Do what feels right for you and do what feels good for you. And whether that's a daily practice or something that you do once a week, or maybe you follow the moons and you do it around the full moon or the new moon, find your pace, find your rhythm. Always, always, always trust your soul cycles, right? That's part of working with our intuitive self, is living life at a pace that feels right and loving for us. But we do need to carve out space for it in a way that feels right. And then the second piece is, I believe we really need a writing practice, like some sort of a practice where you are allowing your intuitive voice to flow through. And journaling is so beautiful for this. If you just sit down and say, what does my intuition want me to know? And allow whatever comes out via pen and paper to flow. That's a really powerful way to like drop out of your logical mind and really drop into your heart energy. And I see the heart almost like a doorway into our intuitive self, right? Like if energy body was a map, the minute we go into our heart, it's kind of like this doorway or a portal, if you will. And I feel like it connects us to like the world of wisdom within and the world of wisdom that's around us as well. And it allows us to bring what's in here and what's out here and ground it down in front of us so that we can make something intangible tangible in a way that we develop wisdom or knowledge or insight. And it's that experience over time of just working with your intuition that begins to create a trust relationship. Like any other relationship, our relationship with intuition is a relationship. So if you have a relationship in your life, which we all do, if you have friendships, if you have, children, a spouse, coworker relationships, whatever it is, family members, if you want to grow those relationships, you have to invest in them in a way that feels appropriate and right, and if you want to flourish those relationships, you have to put time and effort and energy into them, again, in a way that feels appropriate and right, not out of obligation. Our intuition is the same. When we are investing in that and actively putting the intention into the universe of, I want to trust my intuition more. I want to work with my intuition more. I want to grow it. I want to move forward with more intuitive knowing and feel like I'm really stepping into my intuitive gifts and powers, then we have to actually invest in it and nourish it. So sometimes when people say, I think intuition's really cool, but I don't know that I'm really intuitive, my question will be, well, what are you doing to get in touch with your intuition? What are you doing to learn about it? What are you doing to sort of, date this part of yourself, right? For lack of a better word, take this part out and, take it on an intuition date or something. What are you doing with that? And a lot of times what people will find is when they begin that investment process, that's when they really start to see a lot of growth. And if you don't know where to start, again, a good place to start is your journal. Oracle cards are great. Astrology is great. Any book that you are drawn to, any spiritual text is great. See what jumps out at you. You can sit down with pen and paper and start to take that message deeper and allow yourself to intuitively write and say, how does this apply to me? Years ago, it was 4 years ago, I just made myself sound ancient. Like I'm an old man on a mountaintop, teaching about years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I was helping out at a class at a local university, and the class was on shamanism. And it wasn't taught by me. A mentor of mine was called in to talk about native ceremony and sacred circles. And since I had sat in ceremony with her, she invited me in as an assistant. And it was a really great experience and just super empowering to be around all these young people who really wanted to integrate holistic spirituality, and they wanted something that felt alive to them and something that really helped them feel closer to the earth, and they wanted to learn and grow in that. And I remember that first day, the instructor's assignment for the class, and that was, when the class is over, go outside and find a tree and talk to it in your heart. And then go back to your room, because it was like Alaska and it was 0 degrees in the wintertime. Go back to your room and write down any perceptions that came through. That is a beautiful way to build your intuition, through experience, through direct experience of listening to what does your intuitive voice have to say, what images came up, what sounds came up, what thoughts came up, what feelings came up, what did you feel in your body? Did you notice any synchronicities or concurrences that happened after that? Whatever the intuitive practice is, it doesn't matter. What matters is the intention. It's paying attention to those multi-dimensions of information and learning how to extrapolate the flows and really weave them together in a bigger picture. And the last couple of things that I want to say is the number one and number two, blocks that I see to intuitive knowing is, one, we want to know what it means right away. It's a lack of curiosity. It's a lack of curiosity. Curiosity in a sense of being open to discovery, right? And it's wanting the immediate answer. It's wanting instant gratification. It's not giving it time to percolate and marinate within us and to create a bigger intuitive picture. Sometimes intuitive information doesn't come through in a flash. We can sit with an issue and work with our intuition for days, for weeks. Sometimes these things kind of take us through different moon cycles, and another layer will build on top of another layer, will build on top of another layer. And when we finally put those together, we start to see the bigger tapestry. Sometimes we're just given a piece of the puzzle. So sometimes the best thing to do is to just, actually not sometimes, all the time, the best thing to do is to stay open and to stay curious and to really work on releasing this need to know, right? That's like instant gratification versus curiosity. And there's a really big difference between those energies. The second block that I usually see where people really get in the way of themselves is they attach the meaning to it of, is this right or wrong? Is this accurate or not? And that's such a product of our scientifically oriented society and just Western culture in general, right? Again, we want to know and we want it to be measurable, and we have this attachment to being right or wrong. And so when we attach to being right or wrong, we actually close off our intuition because we're already judging, like, is this information, I guess, quantifiable? Is this information a yes or a no? Is this information the exact details? And our intuition doesn't really work like that. Like I said, sometimes it does, but a better way to think of intuition is like a beautiful symphony where first the flutes come in, and then the cello symphony or the cello melody starts, and then the brass section comes in and they add to it. And then somebody hops on the piano and, the keyboard comes in. And as all of these pieces begin to weave together, they begin to compose the bigger whole. Our insight, what we're noticing, synchronicities, what we're feeling inside, the messages that are showing up for us, all of that weaves together into a bigger whole. And so it can take a while to say, oh, okay, this is what it is. So when we let go of that need to interpret right away and that need to be seen as right or wrong, it actually creates so much more space. And I always tell people, like, unless you're going to go hang your shingle right now and start charging a bunch of money for intuitive readings, what's the harm in experimenting with yourself and being open and curious and playful? There is no harm. That's how we learn, that's how we grow, that's how we become a student of intuition. And the more we're a student of intuition, the more we learn how ours works and the more we begin to develop a trust relationship. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. I'm wishing you a beautiful August. Do all the intuitive things you need to do to fully support your journey, and I will see you back in September for another Intuitive You. And if you happen to just be catching this on YouTube, if you go to my website at BethAnneKW.com, I send out a monthly letter called Intuitive You, designed for lovers of intuition, creativity, word self-discovery, and heart magic. And there are some exercises and activities that support this video that you can do to further your growth and your journey. All right. Namaste, blessed be. Take care, everyone.